Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Going to talk about the lunar eclipse coming up. First of all, I just want to say Happy New Year to all of you. Thanks a lot for all your messages regarding the fires here in Australia. It's been really overwhelming, actually, to be honest. Even though I personally haven't been affected by them, I feel like I personally have, from the point of view of 500 million, that's 500 million animals have died just in the last couple of months. And that's never happened before, ever, in this country. I don't even know what it means. In a lot of ways, I really don't know what it means. I can see some of the astrological correlation, without a doubt. But what it means for our future, I really don't know. It's been very distressing, to be honest, and that's another reason it's been difficult to come on and do a live video. Quite apart from that, it's been Christmas, it's been New Year, you know, everyone's kind of been all over the place, you know, just dealing with their own matters and family matters and so forth. I've been working right through, even though I haven't made any videos. I've actually been doing chart readings for people. The only time I had off was Christmas Day and New Year's Day. They're the only 2 days I've actually not worked. Every other day I've pretty much worked preparing charts. So it's been a really busy time for me as well. But I've been really wanting to come on and just basically offer some insights about, well, the month of January in a way as well, but also just a general kind of overview of what we're really dealing with, you know, this year, actually, 2020. There is a lot of talk, a lot of hype about 2020 astrologically, and it is validated really because the Saturn Pluto conjunction is the big player in everything that's actually happening. And the bigger thing that is joining up with Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn is the Asteroid Ceres, and Ceres is without a doubt, beyond a shadow of doubt, an asteroid that unfortunately correlates to grief and loss. She doesn't bring anything else. She always brings grief and loss. Yes, she can bring, you know, subsequent things where people may need to transform or regenerative type of nurturing processes or experiences or awareness around those sorts of matters, because it just depends what Ceres is going to bring up, whether it's for a given individual, a family, a relationship. You know, the grief and loss is an experience in life that no one really can evade. We all encounter an experience of grief and loss at some point, and Ceres is the strongest correlation to pointing to that kind of experience because of her pathology, because of her mythology. Now, before I talk about the lunar eclipse that's coming up, 2020 is remarkable from the point of view of every single planet at some point is going to go retrograde. So 2020 will see every planet go retrograde. Now, it's not like this is the first time this is happening, of course not, but it is quite significant. When I say every planet, naturally that does not mean the sun and the moon, because the sun and the moon are the only two bodies that don't go retrograde. Every other planet from Mercury onwards will go retrograde, obviously including Mars and Venus. Now, we didn't have Mars and Venus retrograde in 2019. So that's one thing. Every planet is going to go retrograde at some stage. And when it comes to the point of each planet going retrograde, I will do my best to do a video for each planet that goes through that process. But I think when we look at the larger picture of every single planet going retrograde, there's a very big call, if you like, where all of us are going to have to step inside, really step inside to really reevaluate where we are with our own personal evolution and growth and development. Because retrograde planets just simply, they take us back into ourself in order to be able to realize and reflect and resolve and identify things that we, when we are normally so externally focused, are not able to really see. So the retrograde process of these energies, which basically become internalized, is what evokes, if you like, the process of having to have to pull back and really truly assess and see things from a deeper level as well. And another way to understand that is to know that, you know, when we are so externally focused, and that's important, that has its place and its importance, and it, you know, it gives us that sense of drive or ambition, asserting ourselves for our goals, you know, all those sorts of personal accomplishments and developments and achievements, which are obviously crucial to our development as well. But if we are always focusing externally and we don't actually pull back and take a step and take a pause and reflect and really assess and really be very honest with our own journey, our own self, then it's very difficult to see where it is we need to evolve, where it is we have developed, or where it is we haven't. What work do we further need to do in our own personal journey? So every planet going retrograde in 2020 is going to be significant from that point of view. And obviously each planet is going to draw on the specific areas of life that the planet correlates to. And of course, the association with each planet in terms of where it's going to be retrograde in your birth chart, and also what is the condition of that planet natally. It's always really important to assess these things, to bring it back to your own personal birth chart. Now, the other thing that I was reflecting on today as well is that this whole continent is virtually on fire, and it is extreme. It really is extreme. And I don't know what the answer is, because it's gotten to the point where the fires are unable to be controlled. You know, we have fires in Australia every year. That's not a new, you know, it's not a news flash. But it is by far the worst fires we've ever encountered, ever. And the ability to control them has, that ship has sailed, literally. So the matter now is the rescuers, the firefighters, the volunteers, all these people, they're just trying to save lives. That's literally all they're trying to do. They can't save their homes. As I said before, 500 million animals have died. It actually hurts. I can actually feel an actual painful point in my heart when I think about that. So much so that I'm just bombarded constantly by, you know, whether it's things on Facebook, social media, messages, whatever it is, about, you know, the state of affairs in this country at the moment. And it is in crisis. We are in crisis here. There's no two ways about that. And I've got to be honest, it's actually going to get worse, in my opinion, particularly this month with the Saturn Pluto series. Okay, because actually, before I talk about that, I just want to say this, and it is important, because when there's crisis in the world, and there is in you know, in so many other places, I'm not saying that Australia is the only place, but without question at the moment, the crisis around fires, I think, is probably the worst here, right, at the moment. Um, so it's very difficult to not have it in my mind on a daily basis. However, that has really impacted my frequency, my energy, my state of mind. It has upset me a lot. And about an hour or so ago, before I sat down to do this, I just switched off everything, all computers, all, you know, everything, and I didn't want to be um, engaged or connected to any news about it at all. I literally had to withdraw and just refocus. And I actually just ended up cleaning. I find cleaning quite meditative, actually, believe it or not, I do. And I found that for about an hour or so, where I just detached from all of the news of what's going on, I felt my frequency start to come back into a more calmer centered sort of space, because I wasn't mentally focused on everything that's been going on. I'm sharing this with you because it's such an important reminder for all of us. The world is in crisis. There's so much shit going on everywhere. But if we are continuously engaging in the negativity of the reality, it is the reality. It it's important to be aware of it, but it's not necessary to be engaged with it all the time, because it will lower your frequency. And when your frequency is lowered, you are at a lesser level of being able to be of any help to anybody, really. So, quite apart from the energetic levels. So, there's a lot of people sending a lot of prayers for rain to happen in Australia. But despite how horrific it is, and it's terrifying. I mean, if you probably have seen the footage, there's literally thousands of people stranded on the sea, on the beach, and they can't go anywhere. So we've actually got Navy ships coming in from other places of the world, actually, to try and help us, because there's not enough manpower to help in the professional forces of firefighters and so forth. And that's largely due to our government actually not funding and paying properly these people who have the highest risk jobs, really, and who save lives. And this is where the government withdraws money. So anyway, I don't want to go on that tangent, because that is highly, highly lowering in the frequency, but it is a reality. And unfortunately, that's what we're faced with. So we just have to deal with it. And people are irate here in this country at the moment. They really are, and they're devastated, and they're confused, and it's just chaos. Australia's national chart is being affected by this Saturn, Pluto, and Ceres. And I won't bring up that chart because it'll just make this video too long. But I can assure you that there are areas of that chart which connect to fire and land and things like that have been hit off by these planetary forces. So, astrologically, the correlations are there. Why is it happening? Are there bigger reasons that we are unable to see and understand right now? That's quite possible. On the other hand, is it a sign as well that the Earth is just having severe reactions to the way she's being treated? Of course, there's so many. When it comes to global warming, it's a bit like Donald Trump. People are divided. There's so many people who believe it. There's so many people who don't. That's not helping. It's causing more arguments and just all sorts of shit that I've been noticing on the internet and so forth. So these planetary forces are definitely having a strong correlation to Australia's national chart. The peak of it is going to be around about the 11th of January. It'll actually be 11th, 12th, and 13th. And the reason I say that is because, well, on the 11th, we have the Saturn and Pluto become exactly conjunct. It's the final conjunction. Saturn will end up moving away because Saturn will ingress into Aquarius in, when is it? I think it's in March. I've got it written down somewhere. I had it written down somewhere. Yes, March. So the 23rd of March, Saturn goes into Aquarius. And I'm going to do a separate video for that because it really deserves a whole session unto itself. Saturn in Aquarius is going to be a big deal. And it is going to be much lighter than the Saturn in Capricorn. Now, Saturn traditionally rules Aquarius and Capricorn, right, in traditional astrology. So it has an affiliation with both those signs. I personally feel that from a humanitarian level, Saturn in Aquarius is much better, much, much better. What we're really seeing here in well, not only in this country, but in a lot of countries, with all this Saturn, Pluto, Capricorn forces in play, we're seeing the absolute epitome of resistance of the forces in play, of the structures and the systems in play that are basically, it's always been happening anyway, forever, fabricating, deceiving, manipulating, the public essentially with their actions, with their information, and so on and so forth. And so the Saturn's trying to hang on, meaning the forces in play are trying to hang on to the absolute falseness of what they've produced. And the Pluto is just slowly but surely cracking it down. And so these higher forces in play, that they're hanging on by a sheer thread. They really are. We can't actually see it so clearly because the way they come off, the way they present themselves and so forth, they come off as though they're in control and they've got it together and they know what they're doing and so on and so forth. But the public knows that that's not actually true. Even in the consensus reality, there's a lot of people that are really pissed off, just with the sheer greed and falseness of systems that, basically rob people's ability to be free, to be happy, to live with health and wellness and so on and so forth. So the ultimate motive is always about injecting fear and so on and so forth. And I'm mentioning all this, even though it's negative, I'm mentioning it because with all these planets in Capricorn at the moment, the node, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter. Now we have Mercury in Capricorn. This month is a freaking heavy dose of Capricorn. It's heavy, it's hard, it's painful, it's really, really intense, and it's bringing up massive, massive issues in the world. So we can't evade it. It's right there. So these forces are trying to sort of hang on to the falseness of what they project, and the Pluto is slowly cracking through and trying to pull it all apart. And the Pluto component is more, you could say, the people, right? The collective, even the consensus reality to a degree, reacting very strongly to the incompetence of governments and people of this status that we have, basically making a mess of the world at large. It's happening everywhere. But I think, especially this month, we're going to see a lot more. We're going to feel a lot more. There's going to be a lot more fear-based projections, media, all sorts of shit. It's just going to be flying around everywhere. A lot of it is true in terms of the fires. That's without a doubt, that's happening. That's real. 500 million animals have died. That's real. There's other issues going on in other countries, right? I know that. Those things are real. But my message is that if we just stay on the negative side of things, just remaining angry, it actually doesn't create change. So we need to find ways to raise our own frequency and vibration, and that needs to happen on a personal, individual level. And then if we are working with communities, or if we have a position in life somehow, in some way, that we can make some contribution and some difference, then fine, then we need to be working on those things. So we need to be sort of bringing our energy into the focus of how we can make things better. And the point is that when there's so much energy in Capricorn, it's very easy to get lost in the negativity and the harshness of what appears to be the reality of situations, right? And I certainly felt like that today myself, like I said, which is why I needed to withdraw and take a step back. So it is a really heavy month. A lot of people are going to experience some very intense situations pertaining particularly to where this Saturn-Pluto conjunction is transiting in their birth chart. I've already spoken to several people, including a person I went to see today for an appointment. I won't say for what it was because I don't want that person to feel maimed. Not that I would say the name anyway, but if I say the profession, it narrows it down, and I like to keep confidentiality as much as I can. But a person I saw today who I've known for many, many years, just separated from a 25-year marriage. Another person I know who was married for about 11, 12 years, recently separated from a marriage as well. There's a lot of things ending and changing and shifting and separating and closing and dying and all of that. Now, this series coming up next to this Saturn Pluto is highly significant because it's conjunct Saturn Pluto, and it's also forming a square, those planets forming a square to the asteroid Juno. So there's huge relationship implications of endings, if I'm going to be honest. Um, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. You know, I've always been a believer, and perhaps it's because I'm a double Aquarian. You know, so I don't follow. I never have. Um, it's not in my DNA to perceive that we need to get married to one person and stay with that person forever, and that's our life. I've never believed in that story that's been put out there, which, in my view and in my opinion, and through the experience of thousands of people that I've counseled, the pressure that people feel because of this model that is supposed to be the ideal, and everyone should be doing that, should have it. And if they don't, they're not successful in relationships, or they're not successful in their marriages, or they haven't got their life together. There's so much pressure on people to conform to this particular model, which is absolute, sorry, um, unrealistic. It seems to me that the more realistic view to take, and there are people that can do it, and that do it, and are quite happy, and their relationships are quite healthy, and that's great, that's fine. All I'm saying is that model doesn't suit everybody. So this Saturn Pluto is tearing things like that down, because Saturn is where our deepest resistances lie psychologically, and that can include our overall sort of attitude, mental attitude, and belief about what relationships should be, what marriage should be, what that part of our life needs to look like, and so on and so forth. So the psychological imprints that can come with that Saturn vibration when it comes to the world of relationships, people can feel extremely inhibited or limited or blocked, or just restrained within their own self from experiencing diversity, because there's a fear about if I don't stay in this marriage, I've failed. If I don't get married, I've failed. You know, I'm not a success in the eyes of the world, and all this sort of business. And the enormous pressure that this puts on people and couples is ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So my message about that is that this Saturn Pluto is going to break down a lot of these walls that have been built, that have felt like they've felt like a level of safety or protection. Um, but to what cost? To your sense of freedom, liberation, sovereignty, ability to experience diversity? I guess it's a question you need to ask yourself. Pluto, Saturn, squaring Juno on the 11th, 12th, 13th. I'll bring up the chart in a moment, which is close to the lunar eclipse. It's a huge energy buildup that we've already started. As I said, I've already spoken to two people, one today, one a few days ago, both in long-term marriage relationships, finished. So it doesn't surprise me at all, actually. The thing that we need to understand about Ceres, like I said at the very beginning, unfortunately, she brings about grief and loss. And the grief and loss, going back to the fires again, yes, because Ceres has been approaching this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. She's been within orb actually for quite some time now, because the asteroids spend quite a bit of time. It takes about what is it? I think it's about 4 years for Ceres to do a lap around the entire chart. That is to go through 12 signs. So they don't move as quickly as Mercury, Mars, or Venus, for instance, right? They move slower. So they do spend a sufficient amount of time in each zodiac sign. Now, in Capricorn, what we need to think about here as well is the opposite sign to Capricorn is Cancer. So we're talking about people's homes, and that's been quite apart from the animal kingdom, which is the most devastating for me personally. But the loss of people's homes, I mean, look, the loss of a home, it's huge. I can't say what that feels like. I don't know. Touch wood, I haven't been through that. So I have extreme empathy and compassion for people who are going through that. That's Saturn Pluto Ceres opposite the Cancer, right? Because we've always got to remember that there's always a polarity, a shadow, okay, in effect when there's movement of planets and energies and things shifting and changing and building and expanding. In this case, we have Saturn Pluto. It's doing a final dance, if you like, to what it's been doing the last 2.5 years, Saturn in Capricorn, right? Um, and in addition to that, we've just completed a whole entire decade. And I mean, for me personally, that felt extremely emotional. The moon was in Pisces on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and I personally was extremely emotional. I have my own personal reasons for that, but I mean, I know that many of us, we would have reflected back, on the last decade, the last 10 years, and there's a lot of things that have happened for a lot of people in a lot of different ways in 10 years. So it's that within itself is a bit like experiencing a sense of grief, if you like, because you are leaving behind, we all are leaving behind a whole decade of our life. And yes, there would have been highs and lows for every single one of us. But now stepping into 2020, the opening to 2020 is so extremely intense because of Saturn Pluto coming to this closure. So let me just bring up the chart. Okay, so this is the eclipse chart, which is on the 11th of January. And you can see here that Saturn and Pluto are both at 22 degrees, right? 22 degrees of Capricorn. Don't worry about the location. This is based in Melbourne, and it doesn't really matter where everything is. We are just looking at the position of the planets from the point of view of the signs they are in and the relationship they have to each other, not the house location. So you can see Saturn and Pluto are together. Now look at Ceres. She's almost 22. This is the lunar eclipse chart, and I'll get back to talking about that in a minute. But I just want to show you this. Okay. So here it is here. Now, if I fiddle around a little bit with this, I'll get Mercury to 22 as well. In fact, I might do it just to show you guys so you can just see how vivid this is. This is going a bit slow. Let me just take it 10 minutes. Just bear with me because I really want you to see this. Okay, now the sun is 21:45. It's not quite 22, but it's virtually 22. We can say that that is 22 from the point of view of everything else that is 22. Look at this, Mercury 22, Pluto 22, Saturn 22, Ceres 22. That's Vulcan. For those of you that may be asking, what is that red arrow? Vulcan is always right next to the sun, so I'm not including Vulcan in this stellium over here. So, and the sun is virtually 22. So this particular day, 12th of January, which is the following day after the lunar eclipse, you can see uh, the moon is at 12 Leo and the sun. So anyway, there's no eclipse yet here. The point though is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets at 22. I think this, as we build up to this particular day, that there's going to be more severe devastation. I know it's not happy news, and you can't make this a happy story, okay? Because Saturn is almost always about separation. It's many other things as well, but it's separation. Pluto, amongst many other things, is endings, death. It can be literal death. And Ceres is always about grief and loss. Okay, and then the sun is there as well. So we have 5 things all at 22 degrees of Capricorn. That's very, very, very significant. I don't know when we would have seen this last lineup exactly like this, with Ceres there as well. So this is the unfortunate news of these days that we are approaching, and I think this is going to have further grave impact here in this country. And I think it will, if you have a look at Juno, see Juno over here, she's at 19 degrees of Libra, and she's squaring all of these 22s over here. Juno is about relationships and marriage, and I've already said what these energies can bring up. It's a square, so there is likely to be some pretty serious breakups, right? And that's fine. If it's a breakup, that's fine. What worries me is that if this, because Capricorn is such a dense, heavy energy, and if this energy gets played out in a real consensus, personality level, mainstream way, then we can see some not very nice things happen between people. You'll see things in the news. I bet you any money around this day here, the day before this day, or the following day, there will be at least one major thing in the news about some severe thing that happens between a family or a couple, right? Just mark my words on that. So yeah, anyway, it's not great, but it is what it is. Now, when we look at the lunar eclipse, which is here on the 11th of January, the day before, we have the eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer Capricorn. And it's there, with Mercury, Ceres, Saturn and Pluto again. Obviously, this is just the day before. So unfortunately we can't evade this energy. This is the vibration for the month. Now, the moon in Cancer is obviously, it's a full moon in Cancer. It's a lunar eclipse. It's not a total lunar eclipse, but it is a lunar eclipse. And we know that eclipses are very powerful. Solar eclipses appear to me, in my experience, to show up more severity of things and crises. And we're still under the influence of the solar eclipse that happened in late December, which was only a week ago. So we're still within the frequency of that eclipse, and we will be for the next few months, couple of months. And here we have another eclipse, just about a week or two later, in Cancer. The solar eclipse was in Capricorn. We've had multiple solar and lunar eclipses in this polarity, Cancer Capricorn, and there's been devastation in people's home lives. When we look at this energy from a collective level, all this Capricorn stuff here is basically all the systems, all the governments, all the systems in play. And here we have the Cancer, the North Node in Cancer, the direction that collectively we all need to be moving towards. But there's huge, huge devastation around this here because of what it's opposing. It's opposing very hardcore, dense Capricorn energy, a build-up of the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto, which is coming to a close. And at least that's good. At least we're going to, see the end of this extraordinarily difficult conjunction. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's one of the most difficult conjunctions, the Saturn-Pluto. The thing, though, on a positive, particularly, on an individual level, there's enormous promise for what you could potentially finally, once and for all, remove out of your life that needs to be removed. That's the best thing about this conjunction. But the ground you've got to walk on to get through this is damn tough. And all of us have been doing it for the last 2.5 years in one way or another. And obviously all the Capricorns, all the Cancers, all the Aries and all the Librans who have been, in other words, all the cardinal signs have been impacted by this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So it's not only about where it is in your birth chart, but if you're an Aries, Cancer, Capricorn or Libran, you've felt this conjunction of Saturn-Pluto extremely personally, in a way that, let's just say that you had these angles as your birth chart. Let's just say you had Capricorn rising and Aries down there on the IC, the same way you see this chart, and Cancer here and Libra up the top. Then you've had these energies basically squaring or forming a conjunction or opposition to the 4 angles of your chart. So it's tested every single major aspect of your life. The 4 angles of the chart, I always say, are the most potent. They are like full voltage electricity. So when something kicks these off by transit or progression, significant and big things happen in the person's life, life-changing things, without a doubt, especially when you're talking about Pluto. Pluto is connected to fate and destiny. That does not mean that you don't have free will. That's another subject. And now that we're coming to the end of this Saturn-Pluto conjunction, these days here during the 11th, 12th and 13th, those days we really need to watch this. We need to watch what's happening in our own self as well. There's going to be loads of stuff happening collectively out there in the world. I have no doubt about that at all. But I guess from a personal perspective, it's about reassessing, if you like, what has this Saturn-Pluto conjunction meant for you, over the last, or even Saturn in Capricorn over the last 2.5 years. The energy is coming to a close. The opportunity of what you've been able to work through is coming to a close. Saturn is going to move into Aquarius, as I said, when does it go into Aquarius? March, the 23rd of March. 2020 is going to be interesting because Saturn goes into Aquarius, but only for a very brief sort of moment almost, if you like. And then Saturn goes retrograde and goes right back into Capricorn again. Fortunately, it doesn't get back to Pluto. So this is the month for this finale of Saturn-Pluto. Big things will show up. Big things will change. Big things will happen. Crisis is already happening. It's evident. You can see it all around you. What it's doing in your own personal life, as I said, this is something that you need to sit down and consider and reflect on. because this last conjunction is going to be the finale, which is good. But you do also need to think about, where have I grown through this transit, through this experience? What have I been able to truly release and let go of in my life? What are the deepest fears and resistances that I have within me that I've been able to smash through? Or has it been the other way around? Have I really struggled with this? What has it been? It's different for every single one of us, right? So this lunar eclipse, I think it's going to be a difficult month. This lunar eclipse looks difficult to me. Look at all the stuff that's opposite it. I don't have anything really light to add, if I'm going to be honest. The lightness, if you need some lightness to this, the lightness would be, it's got a trine to Neptune, but it's, that can be difficult in a way, because the moon in Cancer is incredibly vulnerable. It's interesting because the moon rules Cancer, right? So when people see the moon in Cancer, they think, yeah, my moon's in rulership because the moon rules Cancer. It's, what a great position to have it. But in terms of emotional stability, the moon in Cancer is probably one of the most difficult places to have the moon. It's such a sensitive moon, extremely sensitive, even though it's in rulership, and it gets points for that. But on the feeling level, the feeling body, that can make a person feel so destabilized emotionally. It's really hard to get a handle on it. I know many people with moon in Cancer, and I'm going to say it, a couple of guys that I know have moon in Cancer. Their emotional life is emotional turmoil. It's turbulence all the time. Can't deal with it. Very difficult to deal with. So here we have this lunar eclipse in Cancer. It's going to create this heightened sensitivity on a collective level. It's an eclipse as well. Our own vulnerabilities and insecurities that have been threatened or are being threatened by all this Capricorn energy in some kind of way, where it's a raw energy. We're going to feel quite sensitive. So having said that, you do need to keep in mind as well that a full moon being an eclipse as well, clearly it heightens everything up. So in these days, I would not advise that you make serious long-term decisions about anything, because the volume of sensitivity, heightened sensitivity during this time is extreme. It's not a time to make serious decisions about anything. So allow this to pass. Allow this lunar eclipse to pass. Try and do something easy, soft, relaxing, whatever. But try to avoid intense emotional confrontations, because they're likely to be very, very difficult to manage. Very difficult to manage. So that's what I would say about this eclipse. And in addition to that, because as always, the moon illuminates everything, you perhaps will get to see further, perhaps further clarity on situations that have been brewing pertaining to all this Capricorn energy and the Saturn, Pluto especially, because this moon, this lunar eclipse, is opposite the Saturn-Pluto series. It's there. And what it brings to your consciousness and awareness is going to have to do with this Pluto-Saturn series in some kind of way. In some kind of way. So you need to see, I guess, where is all this playing off in your own birth chart. Now, I'm not saying every single person on the planet, on the globe, virtually 8 billion people almost we've reached. I checked the statistics of the world population just about a week ago. It was almost 8 billion. There's a lot of souls on the planet, a lot who are trying to bring really beautiful change as well. And by the way, on that note, for those of us that are trying to work on higher levels of consciousness in order to bring significant and long-lasting change on this earth. We've just got to keep going. We've got to keep going with it, and not be disheartened by the things that appear during crisis, especially, which is right now in huge ways. But yeah, this lunar eclipse being opposite all this Saturn Pluto stuff, check out where it is in relation to your chart, because it can very well highlight some matters pertaining to that area of life for you. And just think about, the last 18 months or so, where we've had these Cancer Capricorn eclipses. They've been hitting off those parts of your chart, for the last 18 months or so. So this is not a one-off random thing. It's a sequence. And if you watched my eclipse video, I talked about these solar eclipses being connected to the Saras cycle, which is a cycle that can go up to 1,000 years. So these eclipses started somewhere in the North or South Pole 1,000 years ago, for instance, and a particular family was born, and that family has taken like 1,000 years to go through all these growth periods and cycles, and every little eclipse we get belongs to that family. So it has that vibration, that frequency, that energy, that storyline, that narrative, and it just brings it through in different waves, and that means in different lifetimes. So these eclipses, sometimes I guess another reason why they don't hit off every single person is because these eclipses are connected to a larger picture that belongs to over 1,000-year period. Now, we don't know all the different lives we've had in the last 1,000 years. It'd be amazing if we did. It really would, but we don't. So we have to try and make these connections, whether it's through astrology, whether it's through other work that we do as well. But we have to try and make these connections. So these eclipses that kick off in very significant ways in a person's life, where massive cataclysmic events appear, that's usually with solar eclipses. It's usually because it's connected to a larger picture that may not make sense for the person this lifetime either, because something, really random sort of happens that doesn't really make any sense. It could be that the person was, for instance, there was a guy here in Melbourne. This was quite a few years ago. I can't remember his chart now, but this is just an example. I know it's going to be a dark example, all right, but it's life. It's life. So this guy was he was a multi-millionaire. He had created. He was one of the first people to distribute mobile phones, right, when they first came out. So he was only about 40 something, really healthy, loads of cash, very happy, whatever. Jogging one morning, he's jogging, boom, has a heart attack and dies. So what is the reason for something like that to happen? Why does that happen? See, you can't explain that from a logical level, especially when the person was freaking 100% healthy and just boom, goes like that. So there's lots of different things that happen for reasons that are difficult to understand when you just keep a tunnel vision into just a little picture, a little glimpse. We always have to broaden our understanding and scope of vision as best we can with whatever tools we have. Anyway, that was a bit of a long-winded explanation, but I guess I'm just trying to help you guys understand the bigger picture in things. And it's not about anticipating the worst or expecting, some grand, massive, wonderful thing to happen necessarily, because anticipating the worst is not the best thing. I mean, it can prepare you in a way, but if your mind is just focused on the worst, then that creates a lot of fear-based energy, fear-based frequency, fear-based thoughts, On the other hand, the only positive to that would be that it can prepare you for the worst case scenario, right? But in order to be prepared in that way, you'd have to be the person who's really objective, right? Who can be really detached and not emotionally attached to wanted or not wanted outcomes. And, you know, the moon in Cancer, it has no objectivity at all. It's highly sensitized, highly raw emotional energy that will trigger and charge whatever is just lying there, being kept at bay. The lunar eclipse will just open it up and bring it out, right? They always do. It's just that in some cases it could be a day thing where you just have a weird sort of day on an emotional level, and it doesn't really mean neither this nor that. It's just a feeling experience. And on the other hand, sometimes eclipses can trigger very significant life-changing events that do correlate to bigger picture stuff. So that's where I want to leave that. Yeah, so again, just finally, just take it easy over those few days where the eclipse is occurring. It is a very high voltage lunar eclipse. It is lunar, it's not solar, which is, yeah, it's, if it was solar, I would probably be even more worried, actually. Well, I don't want to say worried, maybe a bit concerned, you know, but I mean that actually more from a larger sort of perspective in terms of what's happening on the earth at the moment, particularly here with all these fires. Let's see what happens. I don't think this looks good, but let's see what happens. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, as it were, but I have to be realistic. We are dealing with Capricorn, and Capricorn, on the one hand, the way to get the best out of Capricorn is to not let it suck you in to believing that what you see before you, that's all there is. Remember, there's Neptune, there's Uranus, there's Pluto. So there's other ways of understanding and other ways of seeing things, other ways of having consciousness, perception, understanding, understanding. If we remain at Saturn, we're pretty much screwed. So we have to remember, when it comes to heavy Saturn-dosed vibration, which is what we're in this month, it is what it is. We have to deal with it. We can deal with it, but we have to remember this is not all there is. Remember that quote by Rob Hand, my favorite quote. Saturn is the illusion that there's only one reality, and Neptune's a reality that there are many. And I so freaking love that quote. He just nailed it. Rob Hand's got some great one-liners that he comes up with, and that's my favorite one, because it couldn't be further from the truth. So let's see. As I said, I will come back and discuss the retrograde movements of planets. One thing that's happening fairly soon is Uranus will be stationary direct, actually just in a few days, on the 10th of January. And I might come back and just do a short video on that, because I think I've gone on long enough today. And as I said at the beginning, every planet will go retrograde at some stage this year. And that's significant implications individually and collectively. And again, I think we really just need to get through this month. I think this month is going to be quite testing for a lot of us. It already is. We can't deny it. So we just have to do our best. That's all we can do. Just do our best to handle what is being presented on every single level. That's all we can do. Just ride the waves for this month, because it's not going to be an easy month, in my opinion. So I'll see you guys very soon with some further information, which will not be as heavy as this. It is heavy, I know, but again, I just have to say what's there. So I hope your year has started okay, even though it's been pretty intense, and we had the moon in Pisces to take us into New Year's Day. So yeah, very sensitive vibration, very sensitive energy. Again, dealing with the moon in Pisces for the first day of 2020 versus all the heavy Capricorn dose of energy. So we had this frequency in the ether, if you like, of heaviness, density versus our dreams versus something so much more beautiful in our um, ideals, in our dreams, in our desires, and you couldn't get two weirder vibrations. Capricorn and Pisces. They can complement each other though when it comes to relationships, but that's a whole other story. But just from the point of view of the energy of 1st of January 2020, we stepped into this lunar energy in Pisces, forming a conjunction to Neptune, really probably stirring up even more the things that are so painful to accept about life. Especially when we look at, what, for me, 500 million animals dying is, I don't know, I don't even know what words to use to say how deeply that saddens my soul. Now, I know there's going to be people that will have opinions and thoughts on that, and I'm happy for you to share them. That's fine. Someone said to me, look, how do you know that the animals didn't, agree to this in some kind of way? Spiritually, it was, they agreed in this part of the country, the koalas especially. Actually, it's not especially the koalas, it's actually every single freaking animal, down to a freaking ant. All right. Sending you all a lot of love and blessings, and just get through this month and, yeah, do the best you can. That's all you can do. That's all I'm going to do. See you guys very soon. Much love. Thanks for watching.